Hello and welcome to episode number 261. This is the Project Management Podcast at pm-podcast.com, and I'm Cornelius Fichtner. Nice to have you with us. It's imperative that you know your project stakeholders. After all, to satisfy a stakeholder need is usually the reason why we undertake our projects. That's why we define a stakeholder as a person or organization with an interest in the project's completion. Think of influential customers, sponsors, the public, or your own company that are all involved in the project. Our guest today is Dr. Emad Rahim, who says that because your stakeholders require you to understand the specifications of a project and to meet their expectations, performing an analysis of who they are is essential. And so our interview focuses on a single activity, identifying all the stakeholders we have on the project. This is a time-consuming process, and you want to ensure no important stakeholder is missed. And to help you with that, Emad and I review 8 areas that require your attention. And now you're getting warmer. Oh yeah, you're getting really hot there. You're about to locate another stakeholder. Enjoy the interview.
The Project Management Podcasts feature interview.
Today with Dr. Emad Rahim, appointed endowed entrepreneur in residence for Oklahoma State University and visiting scholar at Rutgers University.
Hello, Emad, and welcome to the Project Management Podcast.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you are welcome. Thank you for joining us today. So we want to talk about stakeholders, in particular, how to identify stakeholders, making sure that we have everybody who is a stakeholder on our project identified. But let's take a step back here, first of all, and let's define stakeholder. So what is a stakeholder in your definition?
Well, stakeholders are people that have a direct or indirect impact on the project. This could be negative or this could be positive, but these people will contribute to the project in some shape or form.
Okay, and why do we need to identify all of them?
Well, it's one is that to make sure that we have all of the necessary information that is related to the project and also know exactly who the players are, where the resources located, who are the clients, what type of materials and content are needed, and who do we communicate this information to. So all those things are really needed in order to fully understand who the stakeholders are and the role they play in the project.
And how time-consuming is stakeholder identification?
It varies depending on how large the project is. The project size, scale, complexity could change how many stakeholders there are and the level that they actually contribute to the project. So it does vary.
All right. So what we agreed to is you co-authored a blog post about this particular topic, and we're going to link to that blog post in the show notes, and we're just going to go through the various areas that you and your co-authors suggest that you should go through in order to identify the stakeholders. And the first item that you talk about in the blog post is you have to review the project charter. How does the project charter help us?
Well, the project charter is the official documentation, right? It's the official contract that greenlights the project. And often it's that project charter that tells us who the client is. Who's the official client that this project is going to report to? Who is actually going to be paying the bills for this project? Who's the important person on this project that we are going to be held responsible to in regards to the project outcome and the quality of this project. So it gives us an idea of what this project is, what it looks like, what the outcome is going to be expected, and gives us an estimate of the cost and at least the direct stakeholder that this project is going to be tied to. So think of it as the official contract that greenlights the project. And it could be an internal document or an external document, depending on the type of organization you work in.
Right. And of course, you mentioned earlier that depending on the size of the project, you have to invest more or less time in identifying your stakeholders, and the project charter will tell you how big your project is or how small your project is, and that will also give you an indication as how much you actually have to do in this regard, right?
Exactly. I've worked on small projects where the charter is simple as a one-page memo, almost like a job request. But I've also worked in very complex projects where the charter can be, some almost 16 to 20 pages long, and you actually have to find the stakeholder information. So you definitely need to take your time and look at that documentation and do a thorough review.
Excellent. After you've reviewed the project charter, you suggest to continue with a stakeholder analysis. Tell us a little bit more about this.
Well, let's talk about what an analysis is, and it's really doing a breakdown in regards to evaluation, assessment of those people that are involved. So we start listing everyone, every department, external and internal, of people that may have a stake in this project. And this could be team members, this could be the client itself, this could be vendors, people in various departments, various business units that you will be communicating in some shape or form. And then we start ranking them or rating them based on their level of participation or their level of importance on this project. Is it high? Is it medium? Is it low? And when will we start interacting with these people? When will we start communicating with these people? Is it the beginning? Is it the middle? Is it towards the end? Is it at certain milestones that we hit in the project? Is it at certain parts of the scope? So this way we can start kind of laying out exactly who will be a part of it and what type of communication we need to provide, the frequency of that communication. And then this also allows your team members to may add on to that discussion. We can have this discussion, but it provides a visual aid to allow team members to add on to this conversation to make sure you don't overlook anyone or any department.
Do you put yourself into that as well? You put your name down as well as the project manager?
Definitely. The project managers are definitely a stakeholder in this.
All right. Once you have done or begun working on your stakeholder analysis, you move on and you look at other documents. We've already looked at the project charter, but you suggest that you take a look at least 3 other documents. Tell us about those 3 other documents that will help us here.
Well, the first one is the contract document, and for some companies, it is the charter. Right? Other companies, it's an additional documentation form, a legal contract that really addresses who the suppliers are, who's the local agents, security clearance, and possible or potential stakeholders that may not be directly listed initially. They may come on board later on once the project starts rolling. The organizational process assets, and in addition to the materials and resources that are available within the company, those organizational process assets could also be the people that are located in the company. So some examples maybe include other plans, procedures, protocols, historical information, schedules, and other stakeholder registers that exist in the company that may tie to the project you're working on. The next one is enterprise environmental factors. These includes, but not limited to, the organizational culture and structure. So this gives us an idea of the process and protocols that are being followed, but also the history of that company, existing human resource knowledge and departments that exist in that company, administration policies, industry standards, any type of government policies that we may be regulated to follow within this type of project and within this structure, and also any future clues to potential stakeholders. While the contract may be somewhat gray when it comes to potential stakeholders, when we start looking at the enterprise environmental factors and see some historical data, this may give us an idea what type of vendors this company may be bringing on board later on, or what type of partners the client may be bringing on board later on. So those are the top 3 that I recommend.
Mm-hmm. Organizational process assets and enterprise environmental factors. That's pretty far reaching. It pretty much includes anything and everything that your project touches or will be touched by. And like you said, it's going to take time, right?
It does. It does. And like I said, if it's a complex project, it can take, several days or even a few weeks to really get this stuff organized and assess and then reassess. Because often we put this stuff on paper, we review it, and then later on, with the support of our team members and other stakeholders, we start adding on to it. So just like the plan, this documentation could be progressively elaborating.
Until now, we've pretty much done introspection. We've reviewed the project charter, we've done our stakeholder analysis, we looked at more documents that may tell us where to find additional stakeholders. And now, in the next step, you suggest now go out and talk to subject matter experts. Whom would you include here under this category?
Well, the subject matter experts could be vendors that you have been working with in the past that may be brought on board for this project. Could be the consultants that you bring on board. It could be previous project managers. So anyone that you feel have an expertise in working on this type of project, in working in this type of environment, because they can give you an idea of the type of people and the type of companies and vendors and and customers they have dealt with in working in this type of environment and in this type of project. So those are the people that would be considered your subject matter experts. So it's important to utilize them and bring them in because often those SMEs may be the project stakeholders moving forward. So they can be anyone that you identified as people having expertise.
Yeah, the number one subject matter expert that I personally always like to go to and talk to is my sponsor, my project initiator, the person who dreamed up this project, because they have probably thought about this for a long time. They talked to other people about this. They know the project a little bit more in depth at this point than you do, and they can probably point you in the right direction as well.
And that's a great point. And by going straight to the sponsor, you may save yourself a lot of time, a lot of headache, because they can say include these people, consider these people, talk to those people, versus you sitting with your team and spending a lot of hours and days trying to come up with a list when the sponsor pretty much have the last say so with the client.
All right. Sitting with your team is a great segue because you suggest the next thing you do is brainstorm. What type of brainstorming would you recommend here?
When we think about brainstorming sessions, we think about that war room, right? Where we, sit in a room full of our team members and other stakeholders and start, thinking about what, who should we include, who should be excluded, the communication that should be involved, the tools, the resources, the techniques, all these things. And that's a part of it. But brainstorming is the creativity process, right? It's okay to throw out names because we can revisit this. And that's what we want to do. We want to start asking those questions. So some questions that I include in the blog is, who is directly and indirectly involved in this project? We need to ask that and get everyone's opinion and start listing all those people's names. Start listing the departments, their roles and responsibility. And we can always check off those people later on, but it's good to have those people on the list so we know exactly who they are. Who may be affected by the project or its outcomes. So going beyond the initial start of the project, but let's start thinking about the end goal, right? When this product is created or when this service is provided, who will receive that outcome? Who will utilize that product? So we have to consider their needs and their stake in the project. Who are the suppliers? We have to think about the vendors because they will be providing us the resources, the materials, the goods. So they do have a stake in this. Who are the shareholders? Who exactly is investing in this project? How many customers are we talking about here? Who has influence and authority to the project outcome? Because while in some cases it's only the customers, but the sponsor, if you are a project manager that works under a program manager that also works under a portfolio manager, they may have influence on project changes, on scope creep. Who can make your project fail? And in many cases, it's all of us. But definitely the customer, can kill the project at any time. The sponsor can do the same. And if the project manager and the program manager are not doing what they're supposed to do, and the project goes way over budget and is missing a lot of deadlines, that can definitely kill the project. Who can make the project success? Right. So start listing on all those people. And while we can say all of us contribute to the success of the project, which I agree, I think putting it on paper gives people that energy, that motivation they need to know that they have a direct impact on the success of the project. And last is there any community that is affected? So now we're talking about social responsibility, right? So if this project goes wrong, who will be affected in regards to the community? If it's positive, who will be affected by the community and what opportunities exist? So we're looking at both the threats and opportunities here.
All right, so we've reviewed the project charter, we have conducted our stakeholder analysis, we researched more documents like contract documents and others, we have spoken to subject matter experts, and we have gone through an extensive brainstorming. Those are the areas that you suggest. These will help you in identifying your stakeholders, but then you go on and you also give us a recommendation as to now what? Now, what do you do with all of this information? And the first thing that you recommend is now you have to create a stakeholder management strategy. Could you explore this a bit for us?
Well, this is similar to the stakeholder analysis. So now we are actually really gathering that data and creating a plan or a strategy behind that data to make sure that we are providing the right information to the right people at the right time. So once again, the right information to the right people at the right time. Because certain people may not need certain information during certain phases of the project, where other people may need more detailed information than others. So we want to make sure we're not wasting time in providing the wrong information or providing too much information, and making sure that we're strategic in when we share this information. So this way it's efficient, it's effective, and people only get what they are expecting.
You also recommend to document everything in a stakeholder register. I suppose this is something that happens throughout the process. This is not something that you do at the end, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's when it comes to projects, when it comes to anything that is business related, legally binding, you definitely want to document, and document will save you. So this way, for example, I've worked on projects where the customer would tell me one thing and I start executing, and then they don't like what they see, or they want to change something, and then they tell me they never said this. Right? I want to pull out a document, say, hey, listen, on this date we spoke, you signed off on this. This is not just my imagination here. We agreed to this. So you definitely want documentation to make sure that your rear end is covered.
We've talked about this a few times already. It's quite a bit of an effort to do all of this. Most of the projects that I have led in my career, they have been small projects and medium-sized projects. Where would you draw the line? When is it necessary to really go through all the steps that you have just suggested? Is there a certain cutoff point that you have, and you say, oh, if your budget is below X, or if your team members are below X, or if your schedule is below X days, then don't bother?
Well, I think it goes back to the size of the project and your expertise in the project, and your team members' expertise in the project. If you know this project's very large and complex, it could be tedious, right? It could be a longer planning process than you would expect or initially, I guess, planned for. But if it's something small, it's something you're comfortable with, these steps can go pretty quick, right? So it's you don't have to spend a lot of time if you know that there's 5 people on this project. If the communication is very quick, it's very short. If you know that the deadline is very short. So it really depends on your level of comfort and your expertise and experience on this project. So you can go through the steps, and it could take you a day because the project is small. You can also go through these steps, and it could take you 2 weeks because the project is a lot larger, more complex, and those stakeholder information in that list may change as more people are added. So it really depends on the size and scale of this project, but also on your comfort level and your expertise.
What is the benefit of all of this effort for the project and for me as the project manager?
Well, first off, we want to make sure that our client is happy, right? I mean, at the end of the day, they are our customers and they are paying the bills. So if the clients are not receiving the right information at the right time, that can actually kill your project. They can lose confidence in you. Second, it gives you a level of comfort to know exactly who other players are, who you can go to get your questions answered, to get resources when you need it, to steer you in the right direction. Also, you don't want to miss an opportunity here. You know that certain stakeholders provide an opportunity to help further your project, to even help fight for certain resources and help you increase your budget if needed. And lastly, it also provides you a better understanding of the size and scale and complexity of this project, because the communication that is tied into project management, when you're sharing communication document, when you're sharing updates, that is also tied into your deadline. That is also tied into certain deadlines and milestones for certain, scope and phases, because it takes time for you to communicate this information. It takes time for you to put together this documentation, to have meetings with people, to actually do site visits to meet with people. So knowing how many stakeholders are actually in a project and the level of communication engagement is required also impacts your understanding of the schedule itself.
Now that I have a list of all my stakeholders in the register and I have my stakeholder management strategy, I'm done, right?
You would think so.
You wish, right?
Exactly. You always need to update this information. People will come and go. Especially depending on the type of project and company, people that their work may be done, so you no longer need to communicate with them. New vendors may be added on, depending on the contract you're working on. And your team may change, good or bad. People get terminated. People get shifted into another project. So it is progressively elaborating.
All right. Final question for you. Many of us, we know we are supposed to identify our stakeholders and we're supposed to do all these good things that you have mentioned. But, it's one of those things that, I don't really want to do it, or I don't have time for it, or there are more pressing things on my project. So what would you suggest that our listeners, all project managers with active projects, can do tomorrow as they are going back to their offices, to their projects, to ensure that they do in fact have all their ducks, or rather all their stakeholders, in a row?
Well, first off, it's researching the documents. So those examples that I provided, the enterprise environmental factors, organizational process assets, and contract document, they already have this information in front of them. It's now just looking at it and scanning it and thinking about the type of stakeholders that are tied into these documents. Second is talking with your SME. You know who your SMEs are, right? This could be as simple as a phone call, right? And it's going to save a lot of time and a lot of energy. And lastly, but not least, if we're talking about being proactive and doing this tomorrow, is doing a brainstorming session with your team to get them involved so that they play a strong role in this process, so they feel that they're contributing on this project right off the bat.
Excellent. Emad, thank you very much for your time and coming on the program today.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much, and I hope your listeners got a lot out of it.
And that was Emad Rahim and his recommendations on how to identify stakeholders on your project. If you are a project manager who wants to become PMP or PMI-ACP certified, then the easiest way to do so is with our sister podcasts, the PM Prepcast or the Agile Prepcast, and study for the exam by watching the in-depth exam prep video training from pmprepcast.com. That's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. As always, you can find us on the web at pm-podcast.com. Please send your emails to info@pm-podcast.com, and when you write, please tell me where in the world you are writing from. And finally, we have this. A project is the longest distance between two states of being. Until next time.